Hey Bob, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
All right, I think we can start with the introductions. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this is like live TV back in the 50s, I apologize. But welcome to, excuse me, another NAFI webinar. Glad you could make it. We'll be talking about learning styles tonight, and we're very fortunate in that we have, well, I'm fortunate because I have a massive head cold and I don't have to do all the talking tonight. And we're very fortunate, though, overall, to have Dr. Hall Skip, that should be Hal, no, Hall Skip Jones, and he goes by Skip, Captain Judy Rice, and Lori Bradner. And let me just say a little bit about our guests, and I'm going to turn it over to them. Skip,
sir,
a Doctor of Education in Educational Leadership with a major in Adult Education, Master of Education degree in Aerospace Education, Bachelor of Science degree in Aviation Management, Associate of Applied Science degree in Aerospace Engineering Technology, and a certificate. And he's an A&P, which puts him way ahead of me in a lot of ways, way ahead of many of us. He's an ATP, commercial pilot, Gold Seal CFI, basic advanced instrument ground instructor, A&P, as I said, and an IA. Experimental mechanic for a major manufacturer of piston aircraft engines. General manager for Chief Pilot for a full service FBO. And on and on and on. Aviation department manager and Chief Pilot for multi-aircraft international corporate flight department. And it goes on for about another 20 bullet points. The really cool thing is, on top of all this, he plays and repairs trombones, which is a skill that I'll never have. Judy Rice.
Well too, Bob.
Judy Rice is we call her Captain Judy. She special education specialist. She's worked with the CAP as Deputy Director of Aerospace Education, with EAA as Executive Director of Youth Education. She, National 4-H Aerospace Curriculum Project, hired her to produce a series of publications, involved 35 businesses and 4-H members. She's about to embark on a around-the-world trip. She's a good friend of NAFI's, and we really appreciate her being here tonight. Lori Bradner is new. She's not a flight instructor yet. She's working on her private, but her qualification is that she has a master's in education. She's a teacher. We met her back in Kalamazoo, Michigan at NAFI headquarters. Her job title is Executive Director, I think I got this right, Executive Director of Education for Sun and Fun down at Lakeland, at the school there. And we're just, she came in and made some very, I'll just say, pithy comments about flight instructors and teaching skills, and with that we challenged her to jump aboard and help us learn. So with that, I think we're ready to go. Judy, are you ready for me to kick this over to you? Oh, before I go on, normally we have everybody off of mute when we do this. Tonight it's a little different. I've got everybody on mute because this is a presentation. We don't want it to go rogue on us. If you have a question or something you'd like to say, go ahead and put it in the chat room or the chat window of your start meeting session. I'll see it and I will open up your mic for a question. But we just don't want everybody stepping on each other. With that, Lori, you ready for me to send the?
I'm ready if you are. I think is everyone seeing the first slide?
Not yet. I haven't sent it to you yet.
Okay.
You should get, and you should have it in about 3, 2, 1. You should have a request on your screen.
I do, and I just clicked yes.
There you go. It's all yours.
Okay. Let's go ahead and. Okay, now everyone is looking at this here.
Make sure that you have, Lori, make sure you've got the slideshow clicked on in your start meeting window. I think you have to click go to view it. Sure.
Yep, there we go. Okay. Now how do I get rid of this thing in the middle?
We still don't see it yet. Say okay down at the bottom. You have the list of things to show?
Clear chat. No, okay. Sorry about this, Bob.
Sorry.
I don't have it in my window here.
Okay. If you want, there you go. You're on. You got it.
I'm on. Perfect.
Perfect. There you go.
Okay. Look at that. She can even use technology. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Lori Bradner. You'll see the pictures of Dr. Jones, Capt, Judy, and myself, and we certainly appreciate you joining us to talk a little bit about learning styles. And we're not going to belabor the point. The bottom line is, okay, now I can't. Let's see if we can get this to forward.
Yes, sir.
There it is. What we're really talking about today is, as a teacher, as Bob said, you know, I am currently learning to fly, getting ready to solo. So, and my goal is to become a flight instructor. And one of the things when we were talking back in Kalamazoo is that flight instructing is not so different than the classroom. The only difference is a few thousand feet, per se. But the tools that you would use to connect, to teach, to help your students learn are the same. And in the classroom, essentially, what I have to do, and those of us, and Captain Judy has been a teacher. She was an ESE, self-contained. Both Dr. Jones and I have taught at university as well at the high school. I've also taught at the elementary school level. Is that you have to be able to assess the student. And it's not so much about who's intelligent, and it's not so much about how smart the students are, but it really is about how are they smart, and how are the students going to learn, and how are they going to acquire the information. When you talk about learning styles, there's several different educational theorists, and we know that people engage in a lot of different types of thinking. And one of the things we would tell you is that when it comes down to thinking, how people learn, how they think, how they acquire knowledge, really almost boils down to their personality. And of course, when you're 1,500 feet in the air in a flying tin can, very in close quarters with someone, that's probably not a bad skill to have, is how to quickly assess the personality. Well, years and years and years ago, back when Dr. Jones was a boy, I'm sorry, Dr. Jones.
Dodging the dinosaurs on the way to school.
You know, it's a shame none of us have and none of us have a sense of humor. When it was a cheap shot. I'm sorry, but there was really what people thought long ago was that there were only two types of learning styles, and one was a linguist and one was logical math. And I think Dr. Jones is a great example. What was the one we're going to date ourselves there. We're going to talk about Star Trek. What was that?
One of my favorite examples of this is the Star Trek series on TV and the movies. And even I'm not a Trekkie or anything. I don't dress up like Klingons to go to conventions or anything like that. But a lot of people out there have at least seen the show and the movies or whatever. And a lot of people may not dig deep enough into that whole thing to pay attention to a lot of the dynamics of it. But one of the dynamics that made that show and the movies work as well as it did is the fact that there's such an incredible contrast between Kirk and Spock in those TV shows and that movie. And that's a good example of the difference in how people approach things and how people learn and how people apply what they do and how they react to different situations. And if a flight instructor sat down for a minute and thought about it and thought about what they would do differently if Mr. Spock walked in and they were heading toward the airplane versus Captain Kirk walking in and heading toward the airplane, there's some significant differences there on how they would react and how they would approach things. And hopefully the instructor would approach those two people at least somewhat differently, I would hope. But that's an example that I use when I talk about this, to kind of kick people off with the idea, because that's a pretty glaring example to get people thinking about this topic.
And one of the things that I think Skip just touched on is that these, based on the personalities, the instructional strategies, as he said, have to change. And today what we're going to do is we want to just introduce one of the foremost theorists is Howard Gardner. And Howard Gardner has been around a long time. And what he did was he took that Spock and Kirk example and he said, now wait a second. Not everybody is, Captain Jim Kirk, and not everybody is Spock. There's a continuum here, and what he did is he came up with 8, and he said that there are 8 different types of really intelligences, and when you talk about that, it's basically 8 different ways people learn, and they can be categorized accordingly. And one of the things, just to kind of give an overview of what we want to do with our time, and we'd love this to be interactive. For those of you that are listening, if you can give us an example of a student that you've had, it's a way that we can just kind of explore what worked with that student, what didn't work. What we're going to do is we're going to go over the styles of the 8, give you some characteristics. Again, I will do the basic background and the actual educational theory part, and then Doc and Judy will fill in based on their experiences and what they've actually experienced in the cockpit, and hopefully you will as well. One of the things that is important when you talk about these learning styles is, of course, this assessment. And as flight instructors, as educators, which you are, you have to be able to assess at different intervals as students are learning. And I certainly can speak for my own flight instructor as I'm training. He's only screamed about 17 times while we've been in the air, which is pretty good. But as we go along, he's continually assessing me and certainly continually giving me feedback to help me in order to reach that goal of my private certificate. So with that, we want to go ahead. We're going to go ahead and start and go into each one. But one of the things that we want you to keep in mind overall is that when you teach, regardless of what you're doing, it's really the 3 C's. You're dealing with content, context, and community. And the bottom line is the content of what you're teaching and the problems that the people have to solve. The context is how they apply that knowledge and new problems that come up, and if they can generate new problems and troubleshoot. And then, of course, the community is how they can actually use it. And so I think if you keep these things in mind as you're teaching, it might help. And so with that, I just want to introduce, this slide actually shows the 8 intelligences. There are the linguistic readers, the logical math, if you will. Those are your Spock people. Your spatial, which are those are people, generally your artists that see things. Those are your old air traffic controllers that didn't need the radar, that could visualize things in their heads. Your bodily kinesthetic, those that move around. Musical, Doc and his trombone. Your interpersonal and intrapersonal. The way to differentiate interpersonal, I always think of the internet. Those are your outgoing, your sanguine personalities, those people that are just out there, don't say a word. Judy and Doc, I know they're dying to. Also your interpersonal, just gotta look. Your interpersonal, which are your solitary, your learners that you're not going to put in a group. You do not want them in collaborative pairs. And then your naturalists and your naturalistic folks. So these are the 8 we're going to go over. And unless there's any questions, we'll just delve right in.
Well, at this point, just as a reminder to everybody, if you have a question, in the chat window of your start meeting session, if you have a question, go ahead and chat. Send them a message that you'd like to jump in with a question, and we'll go from there. Go ahead.
Okay, with and Judy and Doc, I'm going to let you hand this over. I tried to make these pretty self-explanatory to help you understand and just give you some characteristics from a classroom perspective of when I'm faced with a linguistic learner, whether they're 5 or 55. Somebody who's a linguistic learner is somebody that's going to learn better by reading. These are the ones that you're going to be able, that basically are going to foreign name books. They're going to be able to memorize them. They love words. They love to make up rhymes. They love acronyms. And they also, of course, the internet feeds right into that. Judy, I don't know if you can speak to this a little bit and maybe give some examples, or if anyone else, or Doc, if you want to expand on that.
Yeah, I'll give a 2 cents here, Lori. This is the type of student that I would give mnemonics to. It's not me. You know, someone, when I had instructors that would give me, and I can't even think of one. That's how bad I am. You know, I'd spend my whole time trying to remember what the acronym is, and then I'd forget what the heck the acronym was supposed to represent. But these are students that you can tell them to go home to read, and they come back and they have it done. Good book students. They're not necessarily going to have the skills in some of these others that we're going to cover. How about you, Doc?
I think this is something that one of my little sort of concerns and pet peeves, the way the industry's been going for the last, I'll say, decade or so, and I won't blame it on anybody in particular, although there's one company that specializes in this more than any other, and it's certainly not, they just took advantage of a situation. I don't fault them for that, but when I came up through the ranks, you know, way back when, we actually had what used to be called a ground school. You know, people would get together and they would talk, and there'd be a live instructor up there, and you'd talk about things and explain things and whatnot. And now, partly because of economics and partly because of logistics and whatnot, it's not uncommon at all now for an FBO to just hand somebody a bunch of DVDs and say, go study this, and if you have a question, give me a call. Well, this right here plays right on, these people right there are going to be able to do that. They're going to be able to take a set of DVDs home and watch them and come back and know everything. But not everybody's that way. A lot of people out there are going to look at that and say, you know, I don't want any part of this. I want to sit down and talk to people. I want to talk about this. And those people are going to be turned off by that approach.
And one thing I think that's important here, let's see, where did I? There we go. Is that many people, you know, these are very cut and dry, and you'll see we broke them down so that they're very cut and dry. But what you're going to find in most students when you actually get them one-on-one is that they're going to be a combination. And if any of you took that pre-test that Bob put, you'll find that you can actually almost quantify what your strength is, where you're strongest and where you're weakest. And then let's go on to the next one saying that. I think the easiest way to explain this, and you certainly all can read the slides, these are your Spock people. Einstein was a logical, mathematical learner. Newton certainly falls into this. Spock falls into this. They are very, very systematic. They love checklists. They are checklist kings and queens. They love data, and you will find that they are very logical when they ask questions. Again, the internet is something that they're very technologically savvy, and they enjoy technology. I don't know, Doc, if you want to speak to this a little more.
One of the things I do at some point or other in somebody's training, one of the things I do and I do it for a couple of reasons. I do it so the student can experience it in a real sense, but I also do it to let them find out something about themselves. And one of the things I do is I either turn off the master switch, depending on the airplane, if I know the airplane well enough that I can get away with it, or I just cover up everything and just have them try to fly the airplane by feel. And this kind of thing right here, this kind of person on this slide is the person that's going to know and understand every takeoff chart, every landing chart to the fraction of a foot, and all those things in the book. But when you cover up everything in the airplane, they have to fly it by the seat of what used to be called the seat of your pants, or fly it by feel, they're going to freak out. Because they're going to have a major problem with this, because all the things that they love and cherish, the charts and the numbers and all that, are gone. So they got to sit there and actually feel this and understand what's happening. They're going to freak out. They're absolutely going to lose it.
I love it, Doc.
Judy,
absolutely.
did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yes, I'm laughing because I love it. Love it because it really does broaden the students' experiences. That, you know, someday this might just happen, and they really need to feel that airplane, you know, and get the picture and get the feel, the so-called stick and rudder skills.
Yeah. And I think one thing that Doc brought up is that if you push someone out of their comfort zone, we all have our own areas where we're most comfortable. And when you do push them out of the comfort zone, they do tend to panic, like Doc said. They will panic because they have relied on that. You know, don't forget, a lot of these students you get are you know, older. You know, they may be 15, 16, 17, but a lot of them are going to be in their 20s and 30s, and sometimes their 40s. But bottom line, even 50s and 60s, they've been relying on one style for so long that when you take that away, it's very uncomfortable. It really pushes them outside of their comfort zone. The next one, the third one, is really your spatial learners. And I think, Doc, you touched on this about those that are videos. These are your videos. They love visuals. They absolutely love pictures. These are going to be the people that are going to probably respond very, very well to the tangible aids. They want things that they can look, see. They like puzzles, they like mazes, but they're going to be the videos. These videos are going to be very, very helpful to them. And so if they're not able to master the flare or do something that they need to do, spin recovery, if you showed them a video, these would be the individuals that it might just click for them. Is there anything that, Judy, you want to add with a spatial learner?
I find spatial learners also really good in simulators. You know, they're able to watch it over and over and over again, and it'll click.
Yeah.
You know, can somebody, this is Bob obviously, can somebody start out acting one way and really be another? And the reason I ask that, and maybe some other folks have an example, is I had a commercial student who was who was a very good instrument pilot, and he was trying to fly the commercial maneuvers by the instruments, which we all know doesn't work very well. And finally, the way I got him to do them right, he was also a master skydiver, and I finally pointed out to him that he needed to, the way I pointed out to him that he needed to look outside was, I asked him how many instruments he had when he jumped out of an aircraft and hit the orange square at the airport. I guess what it is can people migrate styles depending on situation, or?
They can. Yes, they can. What's not uncommon, at least in my experience, and I'm sure other instructors have had this experience too, is you'll have, I'll just pick one example. You have the kind of person who might be afraid of flying or have a lot of apprehension about it for whatever reason, and they've thought about it, and they've crank their courage up, and they show up at the airport, and they're all self-confident, and they're all ready to go, and initially they come across that way, but it's not something they can maintain very long. So yeah, they can change. You can, yes. You can change over time. In other words, over many years, you can actually change your style. But people can put on what happens on a short term that a CFI would care more about is that somebody will put on a front because they think that that's what somebody's going to expect to see, or they think that that's the front that they want to project, but it's not really them. And in my experience, it doesn't last long. It usually falls apart fairly quickly. And when we get a little further into this, I want to talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, it sounds like my skydiver was a spatial person who was trying to force himself to do it analytically.
These people on this line here, the studying pictures and watching videos people, this is the crowd that made John and Martha King rich.
Yes. But then there's another point also to this, Bob, because that's a good question. All of us have various aspects of all these different learning styles. Some of them are strong, some of them are dominant, and sometimes the instructor or the student can bring out one that's not quite as dominant. So we can do that as instructors, very talented instructors.
Okay.
And Judy brings up a good point. You know, you hear the old adage, and from a classroom perspective, you hear the old adage that children learn what they live. And students, not only are they going to learn what you teach them, but they're going to learn what you model. And so I think that it's important, and I certainly can say this as a student myself. I've got an extraordinary instructor. Christopher is really excellent, and I find myself watching him. And how many times of CFIs have you said my controls and then done a maneuver, whatever they might be doing, maybe it's power on, stall, whatever it is, and the student is watching not only to model technically what you're doing with the airplane, but I will also tell you that I find myself modeling his attitude, modeling his temperament, even almost modeling his vocal tone when he's speaking to the tower. And so don't forget how strong, Judy, that's a great point, at how not only are you instructors and you're teaching the technical, but that your students are modeling what you're doing. And one thing I will tell you that is important as teachers, and we teach this, you know, my strength is really not only teaching students, but teaching teachers how to teach. And one thing I always say to teachers is you've got to know your own learning style, because generally you will teach to your learning style. I think that that's true, and if anybody came into my classroom, I am very bodily kinesthetic, and I move around a lot. So I will teach to that style. So you can actually help your students and model for them. That was a great point, Judy. Just for time's sake, going on to the bodily kinesthetic, these are individuals, I would say I'm probably for myself, this is the one I know best. We are logical, but we love physical examples. We're going to learn by doing. We're going to learn by manipulatives. I learned by watching Christopher and feeling him on the controls, feeling him on the rudders. And so this is the way that I learn. Kinesthetics just means moving. I'm going to be the one. I watched Judy Rice in Trinidad teach a group of high school students the pattern for the airport at Piarco by literally drawing it on the ground and having them walk it. That would have been me. I would have been the one that would have learned it that way. So, you know, and this is, many of us have a little bit of this in us, and again, it's just based on percentages and individual personalities. Doc, is there anything you can add?
This group here, back to what I said a little while ago about the old ground schools versus the new way of doing it with using DVDs and whatnot, this group here are the ones that are going to suffer the most from the school that just hands them a set of DVDs and said, go watch this and ask me if you have a question. These people here are going to be in learning hell in a situation like that. They want to sit there. They want to have an instructor in the front of the room with a model airplane in his hand, and they want to walk up there and feel this thing and watch it bank and see ailerons move and walk around the floor in a traffic pattern, and they want to have another student across the room and carry on a mock conversation over the radio. These people want to do stuff like that. And if they're sitting in a lazy boy watching the DVD, they're dying.
That DVD, I can tell you from being one of these people, that DVD better be Rod Machado, because if it's not, I'm gone.
Oh, even then, it didn't, you know, it just doesn't work for some of us. And I think that those that are listening kind of figured that the three of us are definitely in this category. And the key to this is that we will not choose DVDs and videos. We will find that active way to learn because we do know ourselves very well. The poor student that does not know that and thinks that they have to suffer through sitting there and watching, we're going to lose them.
Yeah, and I think that's important. Moving on, the next one is the musical, and this is, believe it or not, this is actually more common than you would think. And again, this just goes back because, really truthfully, flying is an art, and you might be amazed at how many of your students, if you really, once you get to know them, you realize that they've got, like Doc, they've got some musical tendencies. These are the individuals that are going to repeat to themselves. They're going to, they will speak aloud. They oftentimes will read aloud, and they respond very well to a changing in tempo, not only in how they're learning, but also in your flying. And these individuals, I don't know, Doc, I often think, like when you talk about changing tempo, someone that's musical is going to want to, they're going to want you to repeat information. They're going to want to repeat it to you very often and talk with you. They're going to want to hear themselves say it, but also they're going to respond very well to a change in tempo during the lesson. So they're not doing the same things. They might be doing, straight and level flight and then go into stalls and then do something else. I don't know, Judy, if you and Doc could add to this a little bit, but it's one you don't hear of, but it was one that Howard Gardner felt strong enough and strongly enough that it needed to be considered as one of the 8 major ways that people learn.
Well, the students that have musical abilities, and this includes many of the arts, I have always found listen to the airplane. I'm a listener. I can hear different tones once I get to know an airplane, and that is really, really a good thing. Always, always that art student listens.
Yeah. Doc, can you add anything?
Well, as I look back on the people I've known over the last more years than I care to think about, but I think are really what I consider to be the best pilots I've worked with and flown with are the ones who, without sounding metaphysical here, are the ones who can actually almost sense and feel what's happening with the airplane. And that's these people. You know, they even though the gauges may look all right, they can still sense that something isn't right. And that's these people. And not everybody can do that. Not even all musical people can do that. Because I teach jazz trombone, and one of the things that I do after I work with somebody for a while, one of the things I do is I close all the books and say, okay, now close your eyes and play it and feel it. And there's a huge difference in being able to play something from a sheet of music, which is flying from gauges, and being able to ad-lib it and improvise and whatnot. And that's what the slide, if you look at the third one down, it says making up songs. Well, there's a difference between being able to fly an airplane from gauges and sensing what it's doing. And that's what these people can do.
Yeah.
Very well said, Doc. Very well.
Excellent. The next one is your interpersonal, and these, again, I would say that these are your individuals. I always, again, just as a reminder, because the two get intra and interpersonal. It's taken me years to figure it out, and I finally just thought, you know, the intranet, it's everybody. And these are the ones I think, as we were talking about, when you talk about studying, they're going to want to be in that group. They're going to want to be in that ground school. They're going to do very well with collaborative partners. They're the ones that are going to be talking to pilots. You know, they're the ones that are going to strike up a conversation with anyone in the FBO that'll talk to them. They want to talk about their experiences. They want to hear other people's experiences. And they're always going to be involved, you know, wanting to hear what people are doing in the next project. I don't know what you could add, but they're very collaborative in that way. They're going to want to learn from others and then share their knowledge with other people. Doc, what would you add as far as...
Some people do this naturally. I'm sitting next to one of them right now.
Oh, pipe.
Some of them don't. Some of them are people who I won't mention any names, but somebody who wants to win the lottery buy a cabin in Alaska 100 miles from the nearest human being. But they can still work together.
No, wait, I'm sitting next to him right now.
But but people can learn to do this, and I'm a good example of that. I mean, these next two slides are me basically, because I can do this, but it's something that I have to make and it's not that one. It's not when you look at these slides, don't think that it's one or the other, or it's different grades here. We're talking about shades here, shades of color here, not different colors totally. But some people are naturally this way, like Lori. Some people work at it, like me. And they can be equally successful at it. It's just a matter of again, it's something you have to work at. And students will be that way. You'll have students that'll sit over there in the airplane, and they'll do what you tell them, and they'll learn. But communication is key to anything, and it's incredibly important to fly and learning to fly or teaching somebody to fly. And to me, one of the most difficult students to work with is somebody that won't talk to me. Somebody that won't communicate with them, because if I don't know what they're thinking, then I don't know what to do next. You know, I don't know what they need to know or what I need to tell them, or sometimes I need to talk, sometimes you instruct and not do anything. Well, if they're not saying anything, it's all hard to interpret how to work with somebody like that. My last student was the opposite of that, so I didn't have that problem with her. But
He's not naming any names. And Christopher, you may not say anything either. But one thing I would say between the next two, the next one is what Doc said with the interpersonal, and that's Doc and I, is that the two can work very well together if they meet in the middle. You know, it's Chatty Cathy meets Silent Sammy, and if the two can come together, but you've got to have that communication between the two. The interpersonal, I think that Skip and both Christopher would tell you, when I am in the cockpit, if I'm feeling anything, I'll just use myself as an example of a student. I'm not afraid to say, I got nothing here, what's the problem? And you want me to do what? Whereas someone who's an interpersonal player, number one, they're more in their own head. They're not going to be as vocal about their feelings. They're not going to be as vocal about their fears. They're not going to be as vocal about their trepidations, or maybe if they're unsure. Someone who is an interpersonal, like myself, I will tend to be vocal about that. These individuals, like Doc said, in the interpersonal, in a classroom, sometimes they're the hardest because they're the ones that you look at and you say, are you getting this? And if you have a student that's not able to do a particular technical skill or having difficulty with a technical skill, they keep doing it, making the same mistake. If they're not communicating with you, how do you analyze that? You know, how do you say, okay, where is the breakdown here? They're not getting this. And so, you know, there has to be a nice balance, I think, between these two. Judy, can you add anything to that?
It takes a very special CFI to know how to work with a student that is very introverted. Again, going back to my classroom days on working with students, I found it much easier to work with interpersonal students that were very outgoing than the students that were way down inside of them. And this is really the type of student that I really enjoy working with, because it's wonderful to be able to help a student pull out of,
I think there's,
you know, it's just wonderful.
Yeah.
Sometimes other things combine with this too, and a flight instructor should understand there are some other things at play here. When you have somebody who's introverted, there are often other things playing along with that. An introverted person very often will have trepidations and maybe anxieties about what they're doing. Introverted people very often tend to be very self-conscious. They tend to be fairly insecure and fairly unsure of themselves sometimes, and maybe lack of self-confidence. When you add all those things together and then stick them in an airplane, which is small and cramped and noisy and bouncy and a bunch of other things, that person is going to just be sitting over there and is going to have a very, very difficult time. Even if they want to, they're going to have a hard time communicating with a flight instructor. And Judy is absolutely correct. These people can be very difficult to work with, not in a physical sense. They may be very smart and they may have absolute lot of ability to do this. It's a matter of communicating with them. And you have to get them somehow to have the confidence in you, because it's you. It's not the airplane, it's you, it's the flight instructor. There's only two people here. And it's the flight instructor that's going to have to get this person to come out of themselves and communicate, and it can take time. And unfortunately, this is the kind of person who very possibly may take longer than normal to solo, just for this reason. It may take longer for them to come out of this and get to the point where their confidence is up and you're communicating with them. And when you add that to the point where they may solo, it may take them a little longer to solo than everybody else at the school, that's going to play on this person too. So there are a lot of things that work here. This person, like Judy said, is one of the more difficult kind of students to work with.
One of the most rewarding, you're changing this person. You know, personally, you're helping this person come out, because Doc hit it right on the head. There are other things going on in there.
Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me, Rob?
Yes.
Bob?
Yep.
Okay, I just want to make sure my computer was talking to me. One thing that I think Doc brought up it just kind of clicked in my head. The difference between what I do in a classroom, be it at a university or if I'm teaching at a school, is I have a captive audience. And my students, university is a little bit different, but if you're talking K through 12, my students can't leave. It's illegal. They cannot walk out of the room. So whether or not they like my style of teaching, or whether or not I connect with them, or whether or not I make an effort to learn how they learn, really bottom line is it makes no difference, sadly. And we see that, and we're seeing that in our system right now, and the failing of our educational system, because we've got a trapped audience. Unfortunately, what I'm finding out in the industry, and as I move toward my goal of becoming a CFI, that is not the case. A student comes to a particular school, gets in a plane with you. If I don't like you, or I don't connect, there is nothing that says I have to take that next lesson with you. And I think that's why one of the things why this is so important is because if, as instructors and educators, we don't do that, whereas in the classroom, it kind of sort of matters. But when to a CFI, it could make the difference between whether or not you get paid that day or you don't. It's the difference between having the business or not getting the business or even maintaining the business. And I think that early on, Bob, we had conversations, and many of the instructors I have spoken to have said, and each one of you could probably give an example of students you've lost. And you very well might be, you may not understand why. And, you're standing there scratching your head going, why didn't this person come back to me? What did I do wrong? And it very well could have been that they did not feel, it was not personal in the sense that they liked you or didn't like you, but there was no connection. They did not feel that you were connecting with how they learned. Whether or not they could articulate that to you would be, is one thing, but that's why I think this is so important. Going on, the last one is the naturalistic learner. And these are the ones, and we don't see so much of this. I don't think you're going to see so much of this. But people do have this tendency, a lot of scientists, zoologists, biologists, those people in the sciences, these naturalists, they're going to learn by studying the outside forces, the outside influences. They're going to relate to the seeing, the smelling, the touching, the tasting, the natural phenomenon. And Judy and Doc, I think I'm going to have to rely on you maybe for some examples. This is a tougher one, I think, when it comes to flight students. I don't know, is there an example you can give?
Well, I can give a personal one. I licked my Grumman. I'm sorry. I couldn't resist that one.
Okay, too much information.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay,
You
can
asked
we edit that out of the recording, please?
No.
No, you asked for that one.
Yeah,
this is the type of learner that I find that is fairly sensitive. You're talking about someone that's really in tune. I'll get back to reality here. That is really in tune with yourself and with the planet. So you do have a sensitive person. You don't have to go lick a Grumman.
No, Doc, can you add anything?
No, I don't think so.
Judy, I think you took the cake on that one. We're good.
Yeah.
We're good with that one.
I left Doc speechless. My gosh, put that down in history.
You did.
I'll tell you what, Judy, it's you and Lane Wallace with her Yankee, I'll tell you.
Yes, that is right. We love our Grummans.
There you go.
Yeah. One of the things, Bob, were you finished? You cut out there a little bit.
I'm back.
Okay, no, I'm sorry. One of the things as the studies continue, and I just added this in, if anyone is interested, and this would play into, depending on how much study you want to do, and at the end of this slide presentation certainly is available with the references of, and if any of you have any interest in this or want to study this farther, is that the naturalistic, we also know that as you talk about learning styles, and when you talk about how people are smart, they can also be broken down. We talked about the naturalistic, but also the emotional, the moral, and the spiritual. And I think that, certainly keying into these items will only help you to be better educators, and there's some references there. This last slide, before we take questions, and we are open to your comments and your stories and any way that we could possibly help if you're dealing with a tough student. This is just a quick slide that gives a brief, just an overview of what each one of these, and in place of the multiple intelligences, which was named for Howard Gardner, and he made $1 million for it, or more than that even, you really could put learning styles, or how people learn. And what it boils down to is, in summary, and what's important to us here as flight instructors, is not how smart the people are. And it's not what their IQ is. To help them reach their goal in order that in being successful, I then will have been a successful instructor, a successful educator. Back, I'll hand it over. Judy, any last comments. The last slide is just the references. I'll leave this up here, but again, this is available. Judy, is there anything you could add to that?
I would like to just bring out a point that you mentioned earlier, Lori, and it's very important, is that to lose a student is really a sad thing. And to lose a student to aviation is even twice as sad. You know, there are learning styles that just might not work for a CFI, and it takes an even stronger, better CFI to just say, you know, you would do better with someone else because I cannot tune into you, so that we do not lose that student, so that student does not walk away. Really zero in and pay attention to your students. I think, Lori, that was a great point.
Thank you.
I think if you look at the statistics, and I'm sure, I haven't checked, but I'm sure that there's some of these on the NAFI website, and I know they're on the AOPA website as well. One of the problems we have in aviation, and have had for some time, is that the percentage of students who succeed and get a license compared to the number of students who take a first lesson is pretty small. In other words, we're losing these people. It's not that we're not attracting them. We could always attract more, but we're not even keeping the people who try, who start. And to use just a musical example, since it came out that I teach music, basically if someone comes in to me and wants to learn jazz trombone, for example, I have one chance to connect with this person. And if we don't hit it off somehow, if I can't find some way to relate to this person, they're not going to come back. Well, the flight instructor has the same problem. And beyond just not coming back to you, this person may not.
Okay, everybody.
Not just, we might lose them. Statistically, exactly what's happening. And I know that flight schools don't make money if the Hobbs meters don't run, and I know all that. But to me, one of the most valuable things a flight instructor can do is something that many flight instructors don't choose to do. And that's taking a few minutes and sitting down with this person and
everyone, everyone, bear with me one moment. We have a connection drop. I'm going to reach out to Lori here in just a moment and ask them to reconnect. God damn it. Okay, you're back. You're back now. Okay, everybody, for one of those nightmares that happens when we do this stuff, for some reason we lost Lori and Doc. I'm going to give them a call and ask them to reconnect. So bear with me one moment.
Bob, can you get us? Can you hear us again?
I can hear you. Can you hear me, Lori?
Yeah, I can hear
we're
you.
back.
Okay.
Okay,
You're back on?
Yes, and Skip, you
I
had a
think that
great...
was an important point, Bob. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened to the connection here.
Yeah, I don't know either, but Skip, could you please reiterate what you said? That'd be great.
Yeah, okay, let me take a second and do this. I won't take too long, but the point I was trying to make was basically, if you look at the NAFI site, I'm sure, and the AOPA site, there's a couple things that are happening here. I know that we would like to attract more people into aviation, but one of the things that the statistics show, unfortunately, is that an unfortunately high percentage of people that actually start flying are not finishing. And that, to a very great extent, is a result of the flight instructor community failing to interact successfully with these people. Because basically, when you get right down to it, the flight instructor is the only person this student is meeting in aviation. Now, they may meet people in the lobby or whatever, but the flight instructor is what this person is going to base whether they want to continue flying. The first lesson is going to show this person, and they may go to another instructor, or unfortunately, they may just leave flying altogether and go buy a boat.
Hey, Judy, are you there?
I'm here.
Listen, we just had a question that came up in the chat window that I want to address. That said that, and I think that as CFIs, this is probably for you. Do you think that it's worthwhile that the students should be given some sort of skills test?
Good points there.
Or is it more important that the CFIs actually learn to assess each student, or is it a mixture of both? I know I can answer that for the classroom and what teachers do in the classroom, but what is practical for a CFI?
Well, that's a very, very difficult one. I was based at a flight school where they tested every student that came in, and they really did very in-depth evaluation. This was a 2-day personality test and everything. Students still washed out. The match was still not exact for CFIs. Very difficult analysis. Some instructors believe some people just can't learn to fly. I am not one of them. I believe that there is if someone wants to learn to fly, it is up to us to find the ability in that person because it's there.
There's some people that can't learn to fly.
So as far as my personal opinion is that it takes the CFI to be the good CFI and realize and pay very close attention to that student and the learning styles of that student, and the CFI needs to know their style.
I'm not a big proponent of having...
Of what?
Go ahead, Skip. What were you going to say?
I'm not my general tendency on this thing would not be to have somebody walk in the door the first time and you hand them a test. I think it's better that the flight instructor would do some evaluating on this, and I think it's true for a couple of reasons. First of all, if somebody walks in the door and gets a test first thing, that's going to be a turn-off right away, because they came out there wanting to fly, and all of a sudden you hand them a test and go sit down in the corner and take this test, and I'll be back in 30 minutes. I don't know. In 30 minutes from then, I'd be at the boat deal if that were me.
Yes,
and I think that's a fairly poor approach.
You know, we are going to, you know, we're given the message that we're an elite club, you know, how dare us? You know, how dare us?
Well, the other side of this is that even if that's successful, even if that works, and I don't think it would, but even if that works, we're missing a whole side of this. You're learning something about the student by doing that, but the instructor's not getting anything out of that. The instructor's not learning anything about how to assess the student, and that's the whole key to this whole thing, is getting the instructor to communicate and interact with the student. And you can test the student all you want to, but the flight instructor is getting nothing out of this. They're not learning anything out of this. So where is this going to, what's this going to lead to?
The tests themselves, my thought as a classroom teacher is I can give someone a test, but that test, just like we gave it to all of you if you wanted to do it ahead of time, was for you to learn about yourself. But I think this is why, and I appreciate Bob and all of you at NAFI. We certainly, on behalf of Judy and Skip and myself, we want to thank NAFI, certainly Bob, you and your team, for your willingness to think outside the box and go beyond what has been done in the past to really strike new ground and to create brighter futures through aviation. And I think one of the things I would say is that's why this is so important, that as educators, and I want to tell you as CFIs, you truly are educators. You are teachers extraordinaire. The only difference between what I do and what you do, again, is a few thousand feet. But that is why in a classroom, when I teach teachers, they absolutely, we have to know these. We have to be able to look at the student, look at the personality, watch the student in a very short period of time and be able to size up at least a little bit about what that individual, how that individual is. Are they interpersonal? Are they interpersonal? Are they linguistic? Are they logical? Are they spatial? Are they bodily kinesthetic? And all of these things, are they musical? Are they humming? Are they singing when they walked in? Are they very sensitive, that naturalistic? Just by watching that individual as you talk to them about how their day was, or where did they do, or what, what is their background. Watch them as they sit. Watch them as they talk with you. Watch their body language. As you get more comfortable with these styles or these learning styles as educators, you'll be able to make quick assessments. And as you learn yourself, you'll be able to modify and adapt your own style to fit the style of that student so that you don't lose them.
Okay, I'd like to jump in for just a moment here. I've opened up everybody's mic, so no swearing on the air. Mike Jewell's got a great question. Mike, I think it'd be better coming from you directly. Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'm calling you from Richmond, Virginia. I'm a part-time flight instructor, been doing this for about 15 years. And I find that the perception that people have, I've always wanted to learn to fly, is a common thought. And as soon as I hear that, my sort of hackles go up just a little bit because I've heard it before. And I'm just wondering how we can do a better job of explaining what learning to fly is about. It's not just stick and rudder, it's the whole thing of the difference between being a pilot and an aviator, as I've heard somebody describe. So my problem is that I wonder whether I've contributed to the fact that the student didn't get the right idea, even if they did have the wrong perception.
That's a tough one. That is a tough one. The best I could answer that one is it is our responsibility very first to give a positive image of aviation. We should project and portray every single positive that we can, even if it is one of the hardest things to do, and even if it is much more than anyone can imagine. Most people go into it thinking they're going to get in the airplane and they're going to fly. They don't have to learn systems and everything else. So when it comes down to things like systems was agony to me. When it comes down to that, I made it fun for myself. I did not have an instructor make it fun. We make learning enjoyable. That's our job.
I love that statement, Judy. That's. I think I've got you on the hook for an article for the magazine. You know that.
There we go. There we go.
There you go. Skip or Laura, do you have anything to say about that?
Maybe I need to download it.
Well, one thing I would just say, and I'm going to credit a friend of mine, Janet Ivey, that I've had Judy and I have had the honor and pleasure of working with, and I've got to give credit where credit is due, and she truly is a fine educator. And she said, and I think this is true for all educators, and Mike, maybe this, I don't know if this is an answer, but I think as educators, we have to engage and inspire before you can ever teach. And part of our jobs is to engage, inspire students, and make them think they can, even when they think they can't. And I think I can tell you, Judy, I'm in that boat right now. I never knew all the things I would have to learn as a student. And I have my moments where I'm overwhelmed. And I will tell you, I think all of you at CFI have had those moments, and those students like myself whose hair is standing up with everything that they have to do and all the multitasking that they have to do. But stay steadfast. Inspire, engage, and help them to continue to believe. that they can, and we will. We will, as students, students will rise to the bar where you set it. I don't know, Doc, you're shaking your head. Go ahead.
No, it's true. Yeah, that's true.
That's wrong.
As far as the comment about the student not knowing what, or not, the flying not being what they thought it was going to be, I'm not sure how to react to that, because the student really does not have any idea what flying's about. I mean, they may have some preconceived ideas, of course, but I think part of what a flight instructor should be doing, what I talked about a little while ago, is if you talk to this person a little bit before the first flight, one of the things that should be done in that time, get to know the student a little bit, get to know a little bit about them. Maybe you'll learn a little bit more about how to approach them. They'll get a little more comfortable with you, but if you find out something a little bit about why they're there and a little bit about what they think about it, if they have some really strange conception about what's going to happen, maybe that'll come out. It may not, but that may come out at that point, and it's something you can deal with before you ever get to the airplane. Again, it's back to communication. All this is. It goes back to communicating with this person, and the more you understand about them and the more they understand about you, that would eliminate or alleviate at least some of this, I would think. I would hope.
One of the things, Mike, I think that Doc just kind of brought to my mind was that, you know, I always think about this. Perception is reality, and it's each individual's reality, but it's not always the truth. And as educators, our job is to figure out what their misconceptions are that have helped them to formulate their perceptions that may not be true. And that's part of, I would tell you as an educator, that's part of the joy of teaching for me, is to figure out how did they come up with this perception. I was reading in your thing that, you know, oh, I've always wanted to fly. And, you know, my first question to that student is, well, what do you think it is? What is flying to you? What are you going to have to learn? And really turn the tables on them, and I would say make them an accomplice to the solution. And the more they talk and the more they share with you, Mike, you'll learn. I think you'll learn more about them.
I've just had to reboot the computer, so I've missed all the
Oh, no. Mike, we're going to send you our phone numbers.
It is
Well, I'll tell you what,
as long as I don't have to lick that Grumman, that's my big problem.
Oh, I do all the licking. No, I don't share him.
Well, you just made it worse, Judy. Mike, the good news is that this is all being recorded. It will be on the NAFI website.
Right, thank you. I look forward to that.
Yeah.
Mike, thank you for your question. We appreciate it.
Excellent question.
Are there any other questions?
I see Tom has the second lesson is on communications. I really support that, Tom, because from my perspective, in the classroom, in the airplane, it doesn't matter the age of the student, it all comes down to communication. The better communicator you are, and of course, according to 8083, part of communication is listening. So the better communicator and listener that us CFIs are, the better CFI we are. Goodness knows, you know, I find it incredible that we can pass our CFI test and then go right to an airplane with a student. CFIs need mentors. We need examples. You know, so, you know, I challenge NAFI. Let's take on communication. Let's take on mentorship. Let's really help good CFIs.
And Mike, Jewel, I've got you muted for just a moment because I'm getting some echo off of your computer. But Judy, you just teed up something that's very near and dear to my heart. The name of the magazine is Mentor. The name of the e-magazine is eMentor. Those of you that know me know that I'm passionate about on this subject. If you've been reading between the lines of my editorials and my little weekly announcements, that's really something that I will overtly push, and I think NAFI as a whole will push. We need to mentor our students, mentor each other, and learn not just from our seniors, as it were, but also learn from the people that we are mentoring. Mentoring is a two-way street. And it's every student I've ever taught has taught me something about myself, about themselves, and about flying. And we
I think, Bob, you brought up a good
that.
point.
Go ahead, Lori.
No, I'm sorry. I think you brought up oftentimes as teachers, I will tell you just as a teacher in the classroom, I've learned more from my students than I could ever teach them in my lifetime.
And what a joy it is to be a flight instructor to be able to do that. And
yes, yes.
I agree.
And one thing I would add, Tom, you know, I think Judy brought up a good point, is once you can assess someone and you can watch them, the next step really as an educator, and then if you go to become a teacher, is learning the art of communication. And just like with the learning styles, it's not just linguistic, it's not just Spock and Kirk, going back just to summarize, it's not just Spock and Kirk. We know that there's a large continuum. We know that everyone is a blend and can be a blend of many different styles with strengths and weaknesses. And just like we want to know how are you smart and how do you learn, once you learn that as an educator, the next thing is, what do you do with that? Now, how do I communicate with that individual? Number one, so I don't scare them. Number two, so I don't scare them off. Number three, so that I can connect with them. And number four, so that I can help them not only learn the material, but to be able to serve that community and be able to teach it back. And I think, you know, Bob, we had talked about maybe delving into that next time if people are interested and they're willing.
I think that's a great place to go. If there are no other questions, I think this is a great place to end it. The only original thought, I've had two original thoughts in aviation, and only one's apropos tonight, and John Typen, who's with us tonight, will recognize this. And what I'd like to pose to the seasoned CFIs that are with us tonight is, as you teach new CFIs, or if you're mentoring, please remind them that it's not about learning to fly from the right seat. They learned how to fly, they proved they could fly when they got their commercial certificate. This is really the equivalent of a master's degree in education while learning how to fly from the right seat. The flying part's incidental. You have to learn how to get in other people's heads. With that, I think I'd like to thank Skip, Judy, and Lori for their time and effort. And we will be doing this again. Not quite sure the time frame. This took a little while to put together, but hopefully in the next 2 months. I don't want to put them on the spot yet. We'll have a discussion about that. And we'll keep pressing forward. I would appreciate your comments. My email address is, and I love spelling it on the phone, but my email address is rmater@nafinet.org, and it's Romeo, Mike, Echo, Delta, Echo, Romeo @nafinet.org, or you can send it to send your comments to editor@nafinet.org, and our editor will make very sure that I get the comments. I'd like to thank everybody for their time tonight, and everybody fly safe and go out and get those students.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Skip. Thanks, Judy. Thanks, Beth.
Good night, John Boy.
Judy, don't go licking that